Edwin Chetwynd and I have been married for 3 years. Others say we're a loving and well-matched couple, but only I know that he's slept in the guest room for 3 years. He's never touched me. I placed the divorce papers on his desk, intending to set him free, but I accidentally saw his diary open on the table. Today she forgot to take her clothes after showering. I resisted for a long time, but still couldn't control myself and hid one piece. I hope she won't notice. I froze. So the underwear I'd lost before was all taken by him.
Ding.
Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. A black and gold fountain pen lay between the pages of the diary on the desk. It wasn't the one I had given Edwin, but the missing underwear mentioned in the diary. That was the set I had bought just last week. Thinking back carefully, I must have lost over 20 nightgowns and undergarments in the past 3 years. I had assumed they were blown away by the wind, or perhaps I had forgotten to bring them back from holidays. The one thing I never suspected was Edwin, only because he had such a cold demeanor. After our marriage, we had always maintained a respectful distance. When he spoke to me, his eyes never wandered. How could he do something like this? But last night, Edwin said the tap in the guest bathroom had no hot water. He asked to use my bathroom for a shower. It only took about half an hour, and he even thanked me when he left. I didn't suspect a thing. I never imagined he had taken them. But what use could he have for my intimate apparel? He couldn't wear them. Unsavory images suddenly flashed through my mind. My face burned hot with embarrassment. I dared not dwell on it. I wanted to step forward and read the earlier entries in the diary. I wanted to rush into the guest room and search his wardrobe. But that would be unethical. I calmed myself down. I decided to pretend I hadn't seen anything. I turned and closed the study door. And that divorce agreement? I stuffed it into the drawer of my dressing table. Real or not, I would soon find out. Edwin came home early tonight. When he returned, he saw the living room lights were off and called out to me. Giselle Falconer. I reluctantly walked out of the bedroom. You're back. I didn't make dinner tonight. Edwin still had that serious, unsmiling expression. He always used my full name when addressing me.
But I read his diary.
Just thinking about him doing that with my nightgown while wearing that cold face. I could hardly look at him directly. He didn't notice anything unusual and handed me a blue gift bag. No worries, we can go out to eat. This is a gift for you. I reached out to take it. My hand accidentally brushed against his fingertips. I quickly pulled back. Edwin's eyes darkened briefly before returning to normal. Today is our 3rd wedding anniversary. The gift I prepared for him was divorce papers. Yet he bought me a pearl necklace. Suppressing my complex emotions, I said softly, I'm sorry. I forgot to prepare a gift. Fortunately, he didn't seem to mind. It's all right, I don't need anything. This necklace suits you well, so I picked it up. I thanked him quietly. Edwin said flatly, don't mention it. Get ready, I'll make a restaurant reservation. I changed into a strapless velvet dress with a fur shawl. I put on the pearl necklace he gave me. This outfit wasn't overly flashy, but elegant. When I opened the door, Edwin looked up and was visibly stunned for a moment. Our eyes met, and my heart suddenly raced. Before I could speak, he had already averted his gaze. Let's go. Looking at his cold back, I thought to myself, let's see how long you can keep up this act. In the restaurant, the temperature was high. Just as I was about to take off my shawl, he suddenly looked up and stared at me. Edwin had sharp features and deep-set eyes. His glasses made him look less aggressive and more scholarly. But at that moment, I saw danger in his eyes. What is it? Nothing, I'm going out for a smoke. As soon as he left, that suffocating feeling instantly eased. I thought he was going to eat me alive just now. During dinner, Edwin said he had a few days off work. He asked if I wanted to go home. Actually, according to my plan, I was going to confront Edwin, sign the divorce papers, and then go home. After my family went bankrupt, my dad's mental state was quite poor for a while. He moved back to our hometown and rented a house growing flowers and vegetables. Gradually, he adjusted. My dad always thought Edwin and I had a good relationship. I hadn't told him about the divorce yet. If I went home with Edwin, I'd have to put off the divorce papers for a bit longer. Edwin was waiting for my response. I could only force a dry laugh. Sure, if you're not busy, let's go together then. When we were leaving, Edwin lingered at the door. I looked at him. Did you forget something? His gaze fell on my shoulder, inscrutable. Fix your shawl properly. Perhaps realizing his tone was too harsh, he added more gently. It's cold outside. After showering, I looked at the clothes I'd taken off in the laundry basket. I thought of the bra I'd recently lost. It was a low-cut style, trimmed with white lace. I really liked it. I wonder where Edwin had hidden it. I deliberately left my nightgown behind. Edwin would come to borrow the bathroom again tonight. If the nightgown disappeared, that would be conclusive evidence. Sure enough, Edwin knocked on the door shortly after, still with that cold face. Sorry, I need to use it once more tonight. I smiled at him graciously. No problem, go ahead. Listening to the sound of water in the bathroom every second felt like an eternity. I kept looking at the same page of a book over and over. Finally, Edwin came out. His expression was normal as he said softly, "Get some rest." Good night. Good night. As soon as he left, I rushed into the bathroom. Sure enough, my nightgown was
Gone.
I felt both embarrassed and annoyed. Angrily, I went to the guest room door. Just as I was about to knock, I suddenly heard a few muffled groans coming from inside. Oh no, he couldn't be. My face burned hot. Afraid of seeing an awkward scene, I could only turn back to my room. Overthinking all day led me to have a strange dream that night. In the dream, Edwin was wearing my underwear. He asked me if it looked good. I called him a pervert. He chuckled and pressed close, whispering in my ear, "Giselle, then you wear it. Just wear it for me alone, okay?" The next morning, I woke up with 2 massive dark circles under my eyes. Edwin was already on the phone with my dad. When my father heard we were coming to stay for a few days, he excitedly said he'd kill a hen to make soup. The two of them chatted casually on the phone, their familiar tone making it seem as if we were truly one family. I packed my luggage with mixed emotions. In truth, Edwin treated me quite well. He supported my continued pursuit of painting and never made unreasonable demands of me, despite having saved my family from financial ruin. On the contrary, he was very respectful towards me. The outside world said we had a deep affection for each other, that we were an enviable couple. I had even started to develop feelings for him. However, he attributed all his kindness to repaying a debt of gratitude. I couldn't help but wonder if perhaps he only saw me as a little sister to take care of. Between us, apart from a marriage certificate, there was really no relationship at all. But now, the thought that his suitcase might contain my nightgown made my skin crawl. His seriousness had all been an act. I closed my suitcase, pushing aside my complicated emotions. I made up my mind that after returning from my dad's, I would end this absurd arranged marriage. The drive back would take nearly 6 hours. Edwin had a mild obsession with cleanliness, so I didn't open any of a large bag of snacks he had brought for me. I lay in the back seat, playing games on my phone. Edwin glanced at me in the rear view mirror. "None of the snacks you like?"
Wrong.
He had bought all my favorites. But this was his car, and I still needed to respect his cleanliness obsession. So I lied. "Oh, I'm not hungry." Halfway through the journey, Edwin stopped the car at a service station. When I came out of the restroom, he was standing under a plane tree making a phone call. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, illuminating him. Without his suit jacket, wearing just a shirt, Edwin looked more youthful. He tapped his cigarette, bringing it to his lips for a deep drag. Tilting his head back, he exhaled a cloud of smoke. His strong shoulders relaxed in that moment. When he noticed me, there was a faint smile on his lips. "All right, I've got to go. Call me if anything comes up." This gentle, modest appearance, it must be an act too. As soon as I got in the car, I covered myself with my coat and pretended to sleep, afraid he might try to talk to me again. Edwin drove very smoothly. As I pretended to sleep, I actually fell asleep for real. When I woke up, my dad had already opened the car door and was calling for me to get out. "Giselle, You slept the whole way? Didn't you take turns driving with Edwin? Before I could say anything, Edwin looked at me with a smile and said, "It's fine. She's not familiar with my car. It's good for her to get some extra sleep. After sleeping so much during the day, will you be able to sleep at night?" My dad asked. Edwin said softly, "If she can't sleep, she doesn't have to. It's a rare holiday." It was just a casual remark, but it sent chills down my spine. I quickly got out of the car and ran into the courtyard. As soon as I entered the house, I smelled the rich aroma of chicken soup. "Dad, I'm starving.
Can we eat now?"
I called out. Of course, of course. Let me show you my cooking skills. Edwin, take her to wash her hands and keep an eye on her. Don't let her sneak any food." Edwin, carrying my suitcase and following behind my dad, responded with a smile. "All right, I'll watch her." Hearing Edwin's voice, I tensed up. As soon as he came in, I hurried out. My dad's courtyard was spacious and bright. He had planted many flowers that I couldn't name. After washing my hands, I crouched down to take a few photos to send to my friends. I was in the middle of typing when Edwin suddenly appeared behind me. "That's a weeping jasmine." Startled, I hurriedly stood up, almost losing my balance. Edwin reacted quickly, grabbing my arm and pulling me into his embrace.
"Careful," he said.
The clean, crisp scent of his cologne immediately filled my senses. I felt my heart rate suddenly quicken. When you like someone, even their scent becomes alluring. Just as I was about to push him away, my dad came out of the kitchen carrying the chicken soup. "Dinner time, oh, I didn't see anything, carry on, you two." Edwin released me, and I immediately rushed into the house. Awkward. It was just too awkward. After dinner, I realized there was an even more awkward problem. My dad said he had only prepared one guest room. "Just one?" I exclaimed in surprise. My dad looked at me, puzzled. "It's just the two of you staying. Isn't one room enough?" Edwin chimed in. "It's enough. Thanks for your trouble, Dad." As he spoke, his deep eyes were fixed on me. It gave me chills. Lying in bed, I pondered the situation. I decided to message Edwin. "Why don't you and my dad go out for a game of cards tonight?" "Edwin, I'm tired from driving." Fair enough. He had been driving for over 6 hours. "Then I'll sleep in the living room and watch TV all night." "Edwin, there's no heating in the living room." "What to do then?" "Surely we can't actually sleep in the same bed?" "I can't guarantee I'll be able to control myself." I carefully composed a reply, "But isn't it inconvenient for us to sleep together?" This time Edwin didn't reply instantly. I could hear him chatting with my dad outside. I paced anxiously in the bedroom. His lack of response meant there was no room for negotiation. Shortly after, Edwin came back. I pretended to be asleep under the covers. I heard the sound of him showering in the bathroom. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense. To make matters worse, I had napped for over 3 hours during the day and wasn't sleepy at all now. The rural night was eerily quiet. I could hear his every movement clearly. The water stopped in the bathroom. Edwin was drying his hair. He opened the door and approached. The mattress sank as he got in. A familiar scent wafted over. He had used my shower gel. I gulped, trying hard to steady my breathing. Edwin was tall with long legs, and as he got under the covers, his foot accidentally brushed my calf.
"Sorry."
"It's fine." "Oh, you're not asleep? Isn't it stuffy under the covers?" The air was almost solid. I kept my eyes tightly shut, pretending it wasn't me who had just spoken. But Edwin moved closer. The floral scent was heated by his body temperature. I never realized before how this fragrance could provoke such wild thoughts. I held my breath, continuing to feign sleep. "Giselle, did you read the diary I left on the table?" My eyes flew open, and I threw back the covers to explain. I didn't look, but I found myself staring right into his dark eyes. He frowned slightly. "TSK, you didn't?" My fault for not putting it somewhere more obvious. What did he mean by that disappointed tone? Was this the moment of truth? No more pretending? Was he admitting to stealing my clothes? I pulled back the covers, ready to confront him properly. But he suddenly gripped my wrist and said in a low voice, "It's been 3 years. Are you still so afraid of me?" As he spoke, he leaned in close. His voice was husky as he whispered in my ear. But I don't want to hold back anymore. Giselle, it hurts so much to restrain myself. Don't you believe me? Feel for yourself. My fingertips brushed against his hot, smooth skin. I quickly withdrew my hand. My ears burned with embarrassment. Edwin, have you gone mad? I exclaimed. He had a few extra drinks tonight while chatting with my dad over dinner. It was my father's homemade liquor, quite strong. Now, Edwin's usually pale complexion was tinged with a faint blush. His eyes were misty as he looked at me with a hurt expression. You don't want to touch me, he mumbled. He was truly drunk. His dejected tone made my hair stand on end. Tonight's Edwin had shed his usual cool demeanor. Fresh from the shower, his short black hair was fluffy, softening his sharp features. Without his glasses, his long eyelashes made him look vulnerable and easy to bully. Remembering what I'd read in his diary, I tentatively asked, Edwin, are you drunk? No, he replied. Then did you take my nightgown? Yes, I did. What did you do with it? Edwin seemed lost in thought, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. In a hoarse voice, he admitted, I did some bad things. I couldn't help but recall that day when I heard those muffled gasps outside the guest room. Pleasure mixed with pain. It wasn't hard to guess what he'd been doing. My face suddenly flushed crimson, secretly writing in his diary, secretly taking my nightgown to do that. If he liked me, why couldn't he just say it? I was determined to make him confess. Pretending to be angry, I glared at him. What exactly were these bad things? Edwin's dark eyes locked onto mine. He crawled forward on his knees, trapping me against the headboard. Giselle, I can't say it out loud. Can I show you instead? What the hell? Did he know what he was talking about? Blushing, I pushed him away forcefully. Edwin wasn't prepared. He fell back onto the duvet. His hands braced behind him. Under the warm yellow glow of the bedside lamp, he looked up, his expression bewildered. His chest heaved rapidly. Through the loose collar of his pajamas, I could faintly see his collarbone and chest muscles below his Adam's apple. The lines were clean and sharp, paired with that ascetic face of his. It was too unfair. You go sleep with my dad. He looked down at his pajama bottoms and said bitterly, Giselle, I'm not really in a state to go out like this. I followed his gaze, instantly mortified and annoyed. Edwin Chetwynd. How could you? He sighed softly. I've always been like this. I slept in separate rooms because I was afraid of scaring you. But you can't just endure for 3 years.
I'm sorry.
If you don't like it, I'll control myself better. I got carried away tonight. I had some drinks. If I touch you again, you could really get hurt. Giselle, you should go to sleep. I'll pop to the loo. I instantly understood what he wanted to do there. I ducked under the covers, no longer looking at him. But he sat motionless on the edge of the bed, staring at me. I poked my head out. What are you doing? Don't tell me you want me to help you? Edwin's body stiffened. He swallowed. Is that an option? Of course not. Then could I borrow your pajamas?
Act.
Still acting. Wasn't that white silk one from yesterday in your room? That one, I accidentally tore it. I was speechless. In just one night. Was he covered in thorns or something? I glared at him, gritting my teeth. Edwin.
Chetwynd.
That was very expensive. I'll buy you new ones, lots and lots of new ones. Don't even think about it. I only brought 2 pairs back, but without your pajamas, it's going to be difficult for me to stop talking, you pervert. I couldn't bear to listen anymore. I hid under the covers, covering my beet-red face. Little did I know that Edwin stood by the bed, looking utterly shattered. After a long while, he finally said, I'm sorry that night.
Edwin didn't touch me.
He didn't go to the bathroom either. Instead, he curled up at the foot of the bed and slept there all night without even taking a pillow. The next day, he said he had business at the company and had to go back to deal with it. He told me to stay a few more days. My dad didn't know what had happened between us, but he's been through it all before. When Edwin spoke, his eyes were always glued to me, but I avoided his gaze. After Edwin left, he asked me if I had quarreled with him. I denied it.
No.
What's there to argue about with him? My dad peeled some broad beans as he said, Edwin, that lad, you can't find fault with how he conducts himself, but I think he might be a bit clueless when it comes to romance, like a block of wood. I was slightly surprised. I didn't expect my dad to be so perceptive. Who writes their thoughts in a diary instead of talking them out? He really is dense. My dad saw my gloomy expression and chuckled. In his first year of work, a senior executive took a fancy to him and deliberately got him drunk. When he was pretty sloshed, the exec wanted to take him to a hotel. Guess what that boy said? What did he say? My dad put on a straight face, imitating Edwin's expressionless look. You want to sleep with me? You're disgusting. You're ugly. My eyes widened, and I burst out laughing.
He was.
Was that brave? Wouldn't that offend the client? My dad shook his head, smiling. Indeed it did. We nearly lost the deal that was in the bag. Luckily, I had a good relationship with that company's director, so we smoothed things over dinner. That lad proved himself, though. He got that executive fired the next year. Everyone in the circle knows about Edwin's ruthless way of handling things. No wonder my dad always said Edwin was the most promising of all the children he sponsored. I also understood what Edwin said to me on our wedding night. Giselle, you don't need to feel burdened. Mr. Falconer gave me a hand back then. It's only right that I repay him now. I'll sleep in the guest room from now on. Good night. What little flutter I felt in my heart was thoroughly doused by his words. But Edwin has always been a person who remembers favors and grudges clearly. The first time I saw him was when I brought a friend home. Edwin had just come out of my dad's study. A clean, youthful air hit me. He was wearing a school uniform, tall and slim. His gaze was cold and proud. He glanced at me, nodded, and left. My friend asked me who that handsome guy was. I hid my momentary fascination with him. I shrugged and said I didn't know either. Later, I asked my dad, and he said Edwin was a student he was sponsoring who had won a scholarship and came to repay the money. My dad didn't take it. I joked at the time, saying Edwin had quite a backbone. Later, he got into a university and came to our house again to repay the money. My dad still wouldn't accept it. That's when I thought Edwin is really stubborn, afraid of owing anyone anything. But my dad said he would definitely be successful in the future. Sure enough, in the end, it was Edwin who cleaned up the mess in our family. I'm grateful to him, but I'm also a bit wary of him.
Deep down, my dad sighed.
Giselle, Dad's getting old. I'm truly happy that you and Edwin ended up together. But if you're not happy with him, I don't want you to bear this debt of gratitude for my sake. If you can't go on, don't force yourself. I just want my precious daughter to be happy in her marriage. My eyes welled up and I turned away. Who says I'm not happy? I'm doing very well. He's just a man who puts on a brave face, but is actually timid, only daring to write his little thoughts in a diary. I'm going to ask him face to face what he really thinks. Either we separate or we stay together properly like a normal married couple. I don't want to keep living in this muddle anymore. I booked a return flight without telling Edwin, but I never expected what happened next. As soon as the plane landed, it was pouring rain outside. I was trying to get a taxi when Edwin called. Giselle, Dad said you're back? Damn it. My dad betrayed me. I stammered, trying to figure out what to say. Yes, I was just... Wait for me at the airport. I'll be right there. All right. The call ended. I looked out through the glass walls at the trees swaying in the rain. It reminded me of another time I'd returned from a trip. It was summer and raining just as hard. I'd managed to get a taxi to my building. I ran to the lift, but still ended up soaked. When I got home, Edwin frowned when he saw me. He looked upset. After I changed clothes, he handed me a cup of hot coffee. He said quietly, next time, tell me in advance. I'll pick you up. But I always felt we weren't close. Apart from having a marriage certificate, we were nothing to each other. Edwin didn't keep me waiting long. My dad must have told him my flight details. Through the wind and rain, he walked towards me holding a black umbrella. His shoes splashed through puddles, his trouser legs soaked through. As he moved the umbrella aside, I saw his sharp, aloof features.
Sorry I'm late, he said.
My heart skipped a beat. I lifted my skirt and ducked under the umbrella. "You're not late." On the way to the car, he tilted the umbrella completely over me, getting himself drenched. He took off his suit jacket, but his shirt underneath was wet too. It clung to his muscular frame, the contours visible. There was a clean towel in the glove compartment. I leaned over to help dry him off. Edwin froze. Awkwardly, he took the towel. "I can do it."
He was avoiding me again.
Even though he was soaked through. I grabbed his collar firmly. "You're soaked. Take this off too." He looked up sharply, a flicker of panic in his eyes. "It's fine, we'll be home soon."
No, it's not fine.
"If you won't take it off, I'll help you." I climbed over to the driver's seat. It was a tight fit. Edwin adjusted his seat. My heart was pounding. My fingers touched his shirt buttons. Suddenly, I realized his heart was racing too, out of control. Edwin tilted his head back, his dark eyes fixed on me. Impulsively, I leaned down and kissed him on the lips. He froze, arms spread, not daring to move. Since I'd already kissed him, I brazenly kissed his chin too. When I kissed his Adam's apple, Edwin shuddered. He let out a muffled groan. The next moment, he gripped the back of my neck and kissed me hard. Rain pattered loudly against the car windows. The dim light barely illuminated the scene inside. Only the swaying tree shadows bore silent witness. Edwin lost all control. His kiss was forceful, almost predatory. My head spun. The steering wheel dug painfully into my back. When he finally released me, panting heavily, my lips were numb. He held me tightly and said hoarsely,
"I'm sorry."
I was still dazed with only one thought. "Let's go home." Edwin drove home quickly. When we arrived, he told me to take a shower first. By the time I came out, he had changed his clothes and prepared dinner. I chose a bottle of red wine from the liquor cabinet. Turning to Edwin, I asked, "Would you like some wine?" He glanced at me. "Do you want a drink?" I explained I mainly thought you might be bolder after drinking. Like that night when you admitted to taking my pajamas. Tonight, I want you to admit that you like me. Edwin nodded. "All right, I'll join you." At the dinner table, he poured me half a glass of red wine. "Why didn't you wait for me to pick you up?" "I missed you." Edwin paused, seemingly unable to believe what he had heard. I boldly asked him, "Don't you miss me?" He nodded very seriously. During dinner, we didn't eat much, but drank most of the wine. I wasn't sure if it was the alcohol or his intense gaze, but my face felt burning hot. I kept thinking about the kiss in the car. After dinner, Edwin cleared the table. He cut some fruit for me and sat beside me as I ate, his gaze piercing. He sat properly, but his fingers on his knee twitched slightly. I turned to him and softly asked, "Do you want to hold hands?" Edwin looked at me and nodded obediently. I directly took his hand. "If you want to, just do it." Edwin's palm was very warm. Due to his workout routine, there was a thin layer of calluses on his palm. I couldn't focus on whatever was playing on the TV. My fingertips lightly traced his palm. Edwin's body shuddered. The tips of his ears instantly turned red. "Giselle, want a kiss?" His gaze fell on my lips. Just as he was about to nod, I hooked my arms around his neck and kissed him. I didn't control my strength well. The kiss was a bit hard. I blushed and let go of him. "If you want to kiss, just kiss." I wanted to show him through my actions. Do what you want to do. Don't always restrain yourself. But Edwin was dazed by my kiss. Our gazes met, and his deep eyes were filled with desire. It was a bit scary. I let go of his hand and stood up. "I'm going back to my room." Before I could finish, Edwin pulled me back. I fell into his arms. Still in shock, Edwin cupped my neck with one hand and tilted his head to kiss me. His clean scent invaded my senses. My consciousness was swept into a sea of desire. His shoulders became my only lifeline. Just as I was about to suffocate, Edwin released me. His large hand roamed along my waist. He asked hoarsely, "Is this okay?" I looked at him and nodded gently in the bedroom. The bedside lamp was turned off. The rain outside was pouring heavily, matching the rapid heartbeats of Edwin and me as we pressed close together. In the darkness, unable to see each other's faces clearly, I felt a surge of courage. Warm kisses trailed down my neck. Edwin's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. He allowed me to tease him. I deliberately paused and asked, "Edwin, do you like me?" Edwin's voice was hoarse as he softly replied, "I do. I like you very much."
Since when? For a very long time. Annoyed, I bit him. Then why didn't you say anything?
And why did you make me sleep alone after we got married? Edwin let out a pained groan and raised his hand to stroke my hair. Because I wasn't sure if you disliked me. You're turning this on me. You were the one who rejected me first. Do you know how heartbroken I was?
I'm sorry.
I took advantage of your vulnerable situation back then and married you. My thoughts were impure. I couldn't control myself. If you knew what I was thinking when we sat down for meals together, you'd surely find me disgusting. I gently kissed the spot I had just bitten, now red and swollen. Edwin's breath caught. He tightened his grip on my waist and skillfully flipped me underneath him. He propped himself up with one hand beside my pillow. His other hand softly caressed my face. I lied to myself, thinking we had plenty of time, that someday you would accept me. But then I accidentally overheard you consulting a lawyer about divorce. I panicked and deliberately left my diary open on the table, hoping you'd see it and confront me, even if it meant you'd hit or scold me. But you didn't do anything, which made me even more anxious. I grabbed his right hand as it started to move downward. Angrily, I said, "How dare you eavesdrop on my phone calls?" I even prepared divorce papers, ready to leave you silent. Before I could finish saying man, Edwin leaned down and silenced me with a firm kiss. "No, I won't allow it. You can punish me any way you want, but don't mention that word." The alcohol gave me courage. Pointing at him, I said, "You said it yourself, don't go back on your word." Edwin softly replied, "Yes, I did say that." I pushed him away, reached over, and turned on the bedside lamp. Then, holding the blanket, I picked up my nightgown that had fallen to the floor. I tossed it onto Edwin. "Here, show me again what you did with my nightgown." Edwin's eyes instantly darkened, with marks still visible on his shoulders and chest. He looked dangerous and alluring. He chuckled softly and grasped my wrist. "Giselle, are you sure this is punishment?" "Oh, of course." 30 minutes later. "Weren't you going to punish me? Why are you begging for mercy so soon?" "My stubborn wife. Come here for a kiss." Outside, the rain had stopped without us noticing. But inside, the sound showed no signs of ceasing. Edwin said he would never write in his diary again. Everything he wanted to say and do, he would let me know without reservation. I fell into a deep sleep, using his arm as a pillow. He was right. We still have a very long time ahead of us to love each other. Edwin Chetwynd's perspective. The first time I saw Giselle Falconer, she entered the room with a smile, bathed in the summer light. Dazzlingly unreal. But there was a boy standing next to her. How annoying. I nodded at her and left. I didn't even greet her. I had heard Mr. Falconer mention his daughter before. He doted on her. After seeing her, I wanted to dote on her too. But I wasn't worthy. At least, not the current me. I have a habit of keeping a diary. Perhaps Giselle will never know. My first diary and first fountain pen were gifts from her. She had many stationery items. The ones she didn't need, Mr. Falconer would send to us poor kids. I was stunned for a long time when I received those notebooks with cute anime girl designs. One of them was her diary. I know it's impolite to read someone's diary, but I really didn't mean to. That notebook was the only one that looked normal, without colorful patterns. Opening the first page, I saw a girl's delicate handwriting. September 1st. Sunny school starting. I bought a new notebook. I'll write my diary diligently. I hope my grades improve this year. Dad promised me that even if I improve by just one rank, he'll let me go to Kathmandu with Cardu. I can definitely do it. Let's go in the thick diary. She only wrote one page, but she must have been to Kathmandu several times by now. I longed for a fairy tale I could never reach. On impulse, I took her ruby red fountain pen and started writing on the second page. As if this way I could have more connection to her world. I kept in touch with Mr. Falconer and occasionally visited his home. However, I rarely encountered her there. I laughed at myself for my foolish fantasies, yet I couldn't give up. How would I know if I could stand by her side without trying? But fate played a cruel joke on me. The Falconer family went bankrupt. Mr. Falconer had been deceived by someone he trusted. I mobilized all my funds and connections to save the Falconer family. Mr. Falconer said he couldn't accept such a great favor. Shamelessly, I asked for his daughter's hand in marriage. Mr. Falconer refused. It was Giselle who pushed open the study door and said she was willing. I kept my head down, not daring to look at her. I only spoke up to make my proposal when I heard her footsteps. I was gambling, and I won, but I couldn't forgive myself. On our wedding day, Giselle walked towards me in her wedding dress, looking like a princess. For a moment, I felt like a fairy tale had come true. But I was no noble prince or righteous knight. I was merely an attendant who had coveted her for so long. How could I let her know that I would be her slave for life if she wished? Everyone was congratulating me. No one noticed my hand trembling uncontrollably at my side. In the evening, I gazed at her bare face under the lamplight. My whole body was burning with desire. She was very nervous. Her eyes kept darting away from mine. How could I bear to touch her? I tried to reassure her, telling her not to be afraid of me, but it seemed to have no effect. Our interactions had become polite yet distant. There was no progress between us. She loved to travel, and I never asked about her itinerary. But once, when she went out, she forgot to bring in the clothes hanging on the balcony. She messaged me, asking if I could put them in her room. As I touched the soft, thin fabric, I shamefully became aroused. Only one thought occupied my mind with so many similar clothes. Would she notice if one went missing? Human greed knows no bounds. I harbored wicked intentions. If she discovered it and confronted me, I might as well go all in. I had held back for too long. I felt like I was becoming a pervert. But this scatterbrain never noticed, not even once. That day, when she came home, she was on the phone with a lawyer, discussing divorce proceedings. She probably didn't know I was home. She talked freely in the living room for a while about property division, compensation, and such. I leaned against the door, feeling dazed. I wanted so badly to rush out and fall to my knees, begging her. Don't divorce me. Don't leave me. Just take pity on me. Spare me this. When the living room fell silent, I realized my face was wet with tears. I know I'm obsessive. I'm mad. Whatever I set my mind to, I'll do it at all costs. Except loving her. She doesn't agree to it. And I'm utterly powerless. I locked myself in my room without her noticing, listening to her light footsteps, occasionally passing through the living room, hearing her hum a tune as if leaving me was something that set her free. It felt like I had died. Our 3rd anniversary was approaching. How could she bear to leave me at a time like this? That night, I made up a flimsy excuse about my shower head being broken. I borrowed her bathroom. She sat on the bed wearing a face mask, dressed in pure white silk pajamas. The ultimate temptation. Yet she was completely off guard with me. Her bathroom was filled with her lingering scent. In the wicker basket beside were the clothes she had just taken off. Blood instantly rushed to a certain place. I lost all ability to think. When I left, I took it with me. She would surely notice. She must have noticed. After returning, I wrote about it in my diary. I clipped it in the middle of the title page with my fountain pen. This pen was a gift from her on our 1st anniversary. Black and gold, a collector's edition. I cherish it greatly, rarely using it. For everyday writing, I use her old scarlet fountain pen. If she discovers it, she'll come to my room to look. She'll see this diary. If she flips back, she'll see all my confessions. I long to see her angry at me. Her polite smiles no longer satisfy me. I want to see her angry, see her cry, hear her call my name in a soft voice. For our 3rd anniversary, I gave her a pearl necklace. I had commissioned a French craftsman to make it 6 months ago. Only something unique in this world would be worthy of her. I was terrified she might present me with divorce papers, telling me that was her gift to me. Thankfully, She said she hadn't prepared anything. I saw a hint of guilt on her face. Perhaps there was still hope for us. During dinner, I decided to put aside my work commitments and accompany her to visit Mr. Falconer. With family around, she might not be so distant towards me. That evening, I deliberately had a few extra drinks with Mr. Falconer. Emboldened by the alcohol, I mustered the courage to confess my feelings. But she was still so averse to my touch, even calling me a pervert. I felt as if I'd been stripped naked and mocked, chilled to the bone. I couldn't find a single word to argue back, because my possessiveness towards her had long since become twisted. Her simple statement was tantamount to pronouncing my death sentence. The next day, I left with my tail between my legs. Jesus, when Mr. Falconer told me she was coming back early, I was overjoyed. I checked the flight schedule and called her just in time. It was pouring rain. I had to pick her up. 2 years ago, she went traveling alone and didn't tell me when she returned. She got soaked to the bone. I was worried, sick, and upset. She'd rather get drenched than give me a call. I hated how useless I felt. This time was different. As I walked towards her, I saw the light in her eyes. What surprised me even more was that in the car, she kissed me first. Was she concerned I got caught in the rain? If so, I'd gladly get soaked every day. That night felt like a dream. She was so sweet and adorable. She even asked me to pleasure myself in front of her, saying it was punishment for me. If this was punishment, I'd take it daily. Afterwards, I did everything to please her. She cried from exhaustion, calling my name softly, begging me to let her rest. She said we had many long days ahead of us, holding her as she slept. My eyes welled up. Was this her promise to me? Yes, it must be.